Welcome back. Either welcome back or welcome. Not doing too much of an intro. You already know what the deal is. 30 minutes on the time clock. We're about to go live, and then we're going to start reading. I plan on going live later. Hopefully, I hope you guys make time. I hope you guys get the time to watch. If not, you can always rewatch the VOD. I started reading Bank 3.0. It's been a good book thus far. I'm getting a lot of ideas for videos actually, which I plan on making videos about. I just haven't had time to script them. But anyways, let's get to it. Another idea that I have is to promote this on kind of losing my voice. To promote this on TikTok, just so we can get more people to know that, hey, we're doing a book club, come join us type shit. As always, 30 minutes on the clock. Focus. We're gonna finish chapter 2, carrots and sticks, and then, of course, chapter 3. We'll try to finish chapter 3. I don't have that much to do that I couldn't finish chapter 3 today, even if it's past the 30-minute time. So let's do it. The price you pay for the money you make. I cannot dispute that manipulation work. Every one of them can indeed help influence behavior, and every one of them can help a company become quite successful. But there are trade-offs. Not a single one of them breeds loyalty. Over the course of time, they cost more and more. The gains are only short-term, and they increase the level of stress for both the buyer and the seller. If you have exceptionally deep pockets or are looking to achieve only a short-term gain with no consideration for the long term, then these strategies and tactics are perfect. Beyond the business world, manipulation are the norm in the politics today as well. Just as manipulations can drive a sale but not create loyalty, so too can they help a candidate get elected, but they don't create a foundation for leadership. Leadership requires people to stick with you through thick and thin. Leadership is the ability to rally people, not for a single event, but for years. In business, leadership means that customers will continue to support your company even when you slip up. If manipulation is the only strategy, what happens the next time a purchase decision is required? What happens after the election is won? There is a big difference between repeated business and loyalty. Repeat business is when people do business with you multiple times. Loyalty is when people are willing to turn down a better product or a better price to continue doing business with you. Loyal customers often don't even bother to research the competition or entertain other options. Loyalty is not easily won. Repeat business, however, is. All it takes is more manipulations. Manipulative techniques have become such a mainstay in American business today that it has become virtually impossible for some to kick the habit. Like an addiction, the drive is not to get sober, but to find the next fix faster and more frequently. And as good as the short-term high may feel, they have a deleterious impact on the long-term health of an organization. Addicted to the short-term results, businesses today has largely become a series of quick fixes added on one after another after another. The short-term tactic have become so sophisticated that an entire economy has developed to service the manipulations. Equipped with the statistics and quasi-science. Direct marketing companies, for example, offer calculations about which words will get the best results on each piece of direct mail they send out. Those that offer mail-in rebate know the incentives work, and they know that the higher the rebate, the more effective it is. They also know the cost that goes along with those rebates. To make them profitable, manufacturers rely on the breakage and slippage numbers staying above a certain threshold. Just like our trusty drug addict, whose behavior is reinforced by how good the short term high feels, the temptation to make the qualifications of the rebate more obscure or cumbersome so as to reduce the number of qualified applicants can be overwhelming for some. Samsung, the electronics giant, mastered the art of the kind of fine print that makes rebates so profitable for companies. In the early 2000s, the company offered a rebate of $150 on a variety of electronic products, stipulating in the fine print that the rebate was limited to one per address, a requirement that would have sounded reasonable enough to anyone at the time. Yet in practice, it effectively disqualified all customers who lived in an apartment building where more than one resident had applied scamming for the same rebate. More than 4,000 Samsung customers lured by the cashback received notices denying them rebates on those grounds. The practice was brought to the attention of the New York Attorney General, and in 2004, Samsung was ordered to pay $200,000 in rebate claims to apartment dwellers. This is an extreme case of a company that got caught, but the rebate game of cutting out UPC symbols, filling out forms, and doing it all before the deadline is alive and well. How can a company claim to be a customer focused when they are so comfortable measuring the numbers of customers who will fail to realize any promise of savings? Manipulations lead to transactions, not loyalty. It's simple, explains the TV infomercial. Simply put, your old gold jewelry in the prepaid. Let's see. It's simple, explains the TV infomercial. Simply put your old gold jewelry in the prepaid, insured envelope, and we'll send you a check for the value of the gold in just 2 days. MyGoldEnvelope.com is one of the leaders in the industry serving a gold. MyGoldEnvelope.com is one of the leaders in the industry serving a broker for gold to be sent to a refinery, melted down, and reintroduced into the commodities market. When Douglas Farnstein and Michael Moron started the company, they wanted to be the best in the business. They wanted to transform an industry with the reputation of a black alley pawn shop and give it a bit of a Tiffany sheen. They invested money in making the experience perfect. They worked to make the customer service experience ideal. They were both successful entrepreneurs and knew the value of building a brand and a strong customer experience. They spent a lot of money trying to get a balance right. And they made sure to explain their difference in direct response advertising on various local and national cable stations. Better than a similar offer, they'd say. And they were right, but the investment didn't pay off as expected. A few months later, Feinstein and Moran made a significant discovery. Almost all of their customers did business with them only once. They had a transactional business, yet they were trying to make it so much more than that. So, did they stop trying to make their service? Did they stop trying to make their service better than similar offers and instead settle with good? Given that most people were not going to become repeat customers, there weren't going to be any head-to-head comparison made to the other services. All they needed to do was drive a purchase decision and offer a pleasant enough experience that people would recommend it to a friend. Any more was unnecessary. Once the owners of MyGoldEnvelope.com realized they didn't need to invest in the things that build loyalty, if all they wanted to do was drive transactions, their business became vastly more efficient and more profitable. For transactions that occur in an average of once, carrots and sticks are the best way to elicit the desired behavior. When the police offer a reward, they are not looking to nurture a relationship with the witness or tipster. It is just a single transaction. When you lose your kitten and offer a reward to get it back, you don't need to have a lasting relationship with the person returning it. You just want your cat back. Manipulations are a perfectly valid strategy for driving a transaction or for any behavior that is only required once or on rare occasions. The rewards the police use are designed to incentivize witnesses to come forward to provide tips or evidence that may lead to an arrest. And like any promotion, the manipulation will work if the incentive feels high enough to mitigate the risk. In any circumstance in which a person or organization wants more than a single transaction, however, if there is a hope for a loyal, lasting relationship, manipulation does not help. Does a politician want your vote, for example? Or does he or she want a lifetime of support and loyalty from you? Judging by how elections are run these days, it seems all they want is to win elections. Ads discrediting opponents, a focus on single issues, and an uncomfortable reliance on fear or aspirational desires are all indicators. Those tactics win elections, but they do not seed loyalty among the voters. The American car industry learned the hard way the high cost of relying on manipulations to build a business when loyalty was that they really needed to nurture. When loyalty was what they really needed to nurture. While manipulation may be, hold on. Oh, sorry. While manipulation may be a viable strategy when times are good and money is flush, a change in market conditions made them too expensive. When the oil crisis of 2008 hit, the auto industry promotion and incentive became unattainable. The same thing happened in the 1970s. In this case, how long the manipulation could produce short-term gains was defined by the length of time the economy could sustain the strategy. This is a fundamental weak platform upon which to build a business, an assumption of never-ending boom. Though loyal customers are less tempted by other offers and incentives, in good times, the free flow of business make it hard to recognize their value. It is in the tough times that loyal customers matter most. Manipulations work, but they cost money, lots of money. When the money is not as available to fund those tactics, not having a loyal following really hurts. After September 11, there were customers who sent checks to Southwest Airlines to show their support. One note that accompanied a check for $1,000 read, "You've been so good to me over the years. In these hard times, I want to say thank you by helping you out." The checks that Southwest Airlines received were certainly not enough to make any significant impact on the company's bottom line, but they were symbolic of the feeling customers had for the brand. They had a sense of partnership. The loyal behavior of those who didn't send money is also impossible to measure, but its impact has been invaluable over the long term, helping Southwest to maintain its position as the most profitable airline in history. Knowing you have loyal customers and employees base not only reduce cost, it provides massive peace of mind. Like loyal friends, you know your customers and employees will be there for you when you need them most. It is the feeling of we're in this together, shared between customers and company, voter and candidate, boss and employee, that defines great leaders. In contrast, relying on manipulation creates massive stress for buyer and seller alike. For the buyer, it has become increasingly difficult to know which product, service, brand or company is best. I joke about the proliferation of toothpaste varieties and the difficulty of choosing the right one. But toothpaste is just a metaphor. Nearly every decision we're asked to make every single day is like choosing toothpaste, deciding what law firm to hire, college to attend, car to buy, company to work for, candidate to elect. There are just too many choices. All the advertising, promotions, and pressure employed to tempt us one way or another, each attempting to push harder than the other to court us for our money or our support, ultimately yields one consistent result: stress. For the companies too, whose obligation it is to help us decide, their ability to do so has gotten more and more difficult. Every day the competition is doing something new, something better. To consistently have to consistently have to be what? To consistently have to come up with a new promotion, a new guerrilla marketing tactic, a new feature to add is hard work. Combined with the long-term effects of years of short-term decisions that have eroded profit margins, this raises stress levels inside organizations as well. When manipulation are the norm, no one wins. It's not an accident that doing business today and being in the workforce today is more stressful than it used to be. Peter Wybrow, in his book American Mania, When More Is Not Enough, argues that many of the ills that we suffer from today have little to do with the bad food that we're eating or the partially hydrogenated oils in our diet. Rather, Wybrow says it's the way the corporate America has developed that has increased our stress to levels so high we're literally making ourselves sick because of it. Americans are suffering ulcers, depression, high blood pressure, anxiety, and cancer at record levels. According to Wybrow, all those promises of more, more are actually overloading the reward circuit of our brain. The short-term gains that drive businesses in America today are actually destroying our health. Just because it works doesn't make it right. The danger of manipulations is that they work. And because manipulation work, they have become the norm, practiced by the vast majority of companies and organizations, regardless of size or industry. That fact alone creates a systemic peer pressure. With perfect irony, we, the manipulators, we have been manipulated by our own system. With every price drop, promotion, fear. With every price drop, promotion, fear-based or aspirational message, and novelty we use to achieve our goals, we find our companies, our organizations, and our systems getting weaker and weaker. The economic crisis that began in 2008 is just another, albeit extreme, example of what can happen if flawed assumptions is allowed to carry on for too long. The collapse of the housing market and the subsequent collapse of the banking industry were due to the decisions made inside the banks based on a series of manipulations. Employees were manipulated with bonuses that encouraged short-term decision-making. Open shaming of anyone who spoke out discouraged responsible dissent. A free flow of loans encouraged aspiring home buyers to buy more than they could afford at all price levels. There were very little loyalty. It was all a series of transactional decisions, effective, but at a high cost. Few were working for the good of the whole. Why would they? There was no reason given to do so. There was no cause or belief beyond instant gratification. Bankers weren't the first to be swept up by their own success. American car manufacturers have conducted themselves the same way for decades. Manipulation after manipulation. Short-term decisions built upon short-term decision. Buckling or even collapse is the only logical conclusion where manipulations are the main course of action. The reality is, in today's world, manipulation are the norm, but there is an alternative. Okay, part two, an alternative perspective, something like that. An alternative perspective. Chee. The golden circle. Why, how, and what? What's the circle? There are a few leaders who choose to inspire rather than manipulate in order to motivate people. Whether individuals or organizations, every single one of these inspiring leaders thinks, acts, and communicates exactly the same way. And it's the complete opposite of the rest of us. Consciously or not, how they do it is by following a naturally occurring pattern that I call the golden circle. The concept of the golden circle was inspired by the golden ratio, a simple mathematical relationship that has fascinated mathematicians, biologists, architects, artists, musicians, and naturists since the beginning of history. From the Egyptians to Pythagoras to Leonardo da Vinci, many have looked to the golden ratio to provide a mathematical formula for proportion and even beauty. It also supports the notion that there is more order in nature than we think, as in the symmetry of leaves and the geometric perfection of snowflakes. What I found so attractive about the golden ratio, however, was that it had so many applications in so many fields. And even more significantly, it offered a formula that could produce repeatable and predictable results in places where such results might have been assumed to be a random occurrence or luck. Even Mother Nature, for most people a symbol of unpredictability, exhibited more order than we previously acknowledged. Like the golden ratio, which offers evidence of order in the seeming disorder of nature. The golden circle finds order and predictability in human behavior. Put simply, it helps us understand why we do what we do. Why we do what we do. The golden circle provides compelling evidence of how much more we can achieve if we remind ourselves to start everything we do by first asking why. The golden circle is an alternative perspective to existing assumptions about why some leaders and organizations have achieved such a disproportionate degree of influence. It offers clear insight as to how Apple is able to innovate in so many diverse industries and never lose its ability to do so. It explains why people tattoo Harley Davidson logos on their bodies. It provides a clear understanding not just of how Southwest Airlines created the most profitable airline in history, but why the things it did worked. It even gives some clarity as to why people follow Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in a movement that changed the nation, and why we look up to John F. Kennedy challenge to put a man on the moon even after he died. The golden circle shows how these leaders were able to inspire action instead of manipulating people to act. This alternative perspective is not just useful for changing the world. There are practical applications for the ability to inspire too. It can be used as a guide to vastly improving leadership, corporate culture, hiring, product development, sales, and marketing. It explains loyalty and how to create enough momentum to turn an idea into a social movement. And it all starts from the inside out. It starts with why. Before we can explore its applications, let me first define the terms. starting from the outside of the circle and moving inward. What? Every single company and organization on the planet knows what they do. Knows what they do. This is true no matter how big or small, no matter what industry. Everyone is easily able to describe the product or service a company sells or the job function they have within that system. What's are easy to identify. How? Some companies and people know how they do what they do, whether you call them a differentiating value proposition, proprietary process, or unique selling proposition. Hows are often given to explain how something is different or better, not as obvious as what. Many think these are the differentiating or motivating factors in a decision. It would be false to assume that that's all that is required. There is one missing detail. Why? Very few people or companies can clearly articulate why they do what they do. Why? When I say why, I don't mean to make money. That's a result. By why, I mean what is your purpose, cause, or belief? Why does your company exist? Why do you get out of bed every morning? And why should you care? When most organizations or people think, act, or communicate, they do so from the outside in. From what to why, and for good reasons. They go from clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. We say what we do. We sometimes say how we do it, but we rarely say why we do what we do. But not the inspired companies, not the inspired leaders, every single one of them, regardless of the size of their industry, thinks, acts, and communicate from the inside out. I use Apple Inc. frequently as an example simply because they have broad recognition and their products are easy to grasp and compare to others. What's more, Apple's success over time is not typical. Their ability to remain one of the most innovative companies year after year, combined with their uncanny ability to attract a cult-like following, makes them a great example to demonstrate many of the principles of the Golden Circle. I'll start with a simple marketing example. If Apple were like most other companies, a marketing message from them would move from the outside in of the Golden Circle. It will start with some statement of what the company does or makes, followed by how they think they are different or better than the competition, followed by some call to action. With that, the company would expect some behavior in return. In this case, a purchase. A marketing message from Apple, if they were like everyone else, might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Wanna buy one? It's not very compelling sales pitch, but that's how most companies sell to us. This is the norm. First, they start with what they do. Here's our new car. Then they tell us how they do it or how they are better. It's got leather seats, great gas mileage, and great financing. Then they make a call to action and expect a behavior. You see this pattern in business to consumer markets as well as business to business environments. Here is our law firm. Our lawyers went to the best schools and we represent the biggest clients. Hire us. This pattern is also alive and well in politics. Here's the candidates. Here are her views on taxes and immigration. See how she's different? Vote for her. In every case, the communication is organized in an attempt to convince someone of a difference or superior value. Wow. But that is not what the inspiring leaders in organizations do. Every one of them, regardless of size or industry, thinks, acts, and communicate from the inside out. Let's look at the Apple example again, and we write the example in order. In the order Apple actually communicates, this time the example starts with why. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. And we happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Oh, interesting. It's a completely different message. It actually feels different from the first one. We're much more eager to buy a computer from Apple after reading the second version. And all I did was reverse the order of the information. There's no trickery, no manipulation, no free stuff, no aspirational messages, no celebrities. Apple don't simply reverse the order of information. Their message starts with why, a purpose, cause or belief that has nothing to do with what they do. What they do, the product they make, from computers to small electronics, no longer serves as the reason to buy. They serve as the tangible proof of their cause. The design and user interface of Apple products, though important, are not enough in themselves to generate such astounding loyalty among their customers. 30 minutes, but I want to fit. I have nothing going on. I'm gonna keep reading to the chapter. What they do, the product they make, from computers to small electronics, no longer serve as the reason to buy. They serve as the tangible proof of their cause. The design and user interface of Apple products, though important, are not enough in themselves to generate such astounding loyalty among their customers. Those important elements help make the cause tangible and rational. Others can hire top designers and brilliant engineers and make beautiful, easy to use products and copy the things Apple does. And they could even steal away Apple employees to do it, but the results would not be the same. Simply copying what Apple does, of how it does it, won't work. There is something more, something hard to describe and near impossible to copy that gives Apple such a disproportionate level of influence in the market. The example starts to prove that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. It's worth repeating, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Apple's ability to design such innovative products so consistently and their ability to command such astounding loyalty for their products come from more than simply what they do. The problem is organizations use the tangible feature and benefits to build a rational argument for why their company, product, or idea is better than another. Sometimes those comparisons are made outright, and sometimes analogies or metaphors are drawn. But the effect is the same. Companies try to sell us what they do, but we buy why they do it. This is what I mean when I say they communicate from the outside in. They lead with what and how. When communicating from the inside out, however, the why is offered as the reason to buy, and the what serve as a tangible proof of that belief. The things we can point to rationalize or explain the reasons we're drawn to one product, company, or idea even over another. What companies do are external factors, but why they do it is something deeper. In practical terms, there is nothing special about Apple. It's just a company like any other. There is no real difference between Apple and any of its competitors. Dell, HP, Gateway, Toshiba, pick one. It doesn't matter. They are all corporate structures. That's all a company is. It's a structure. They all make computers. They all have some systems that work and some that don't. They all have equal access to the same talent, the same resources, the same agencies, the same consultant, and the same media. They all have some good managers, some good designers, and smart engineers. They all make some products that work well and some that don't. Even Apple. Why then does Apple have such disproportionate level of success? Why are they more innovative? Why are they consistently more profitable? And how did they manage to build such cultish loyal following? Something very few companies are ever able to achieve. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This is the reason Apple has earned a remarkable level of flexibility. People are obviously comfortable buying a computer from Apple, but people are also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from them, or cell phone, or DVR. Consumers and investors are completely at ease with Apple offering so many different products and so many different categories. It's not what Apple does that distinguishes them, it's why they do it. Their products give life to their cause. It's not so foolhardily, I never heard that before. It's not so foolhardily as to propose that their products don't matter. Of course they do. But it's the reason they matter that is the contrary to the conversation wisdom. Their products unto themselves are not the reasons Apple is perceived as superior. Their products, what Apple makes, serve as the tangible proof of what they believe. It is that clear correlation between what they do and why they do it that makes Apple stand out. This is the reason we perceive Apple as being authentic. Everything they do works to demonstrate their why, to challenge the status quo, regardless of the product they make or industry in which they operate. It is always clear that Apple thinks different. When Apple first came out with the Macintosh, having an operating system based on a graphical user interface and not a complicated computer language challenged how computers worked at the time. What's more, where most technology companies saw their biggest marketing opportunity among businesses, Apple wanted to give an individual sitting at home the same power as any company. Apple's why? To challenge the status quo and to empower the individual is a pattern in that it repeats in all they do and say. It comes to life in their iPod, and even more so in iTunes, a service that challenged the status quo of the music industry's distribution model and was better suited to how individuals consume music. The music industry was organized to sell albums, a model that evolved during a time when listening to music was largely an activity we did at home. Sony changed that in 1979 with the introduction of the Walkman. But even the Walkman and later the Discman was limited to the number of cassette tapes or CDs you would carry in addition to the device. The development of the MP3 music format changed all of that. Digital compression allowed for a very high quality of songs to be stored on a relatively inexpensive and highly portable digital music device. Our ability to walk out of the house with only one easy to carry device transformed music into something we largely listen to away from home. And the MP3 not only changed where we listen to music, it also transformed us from an album collecting culture to a song collecting culture. While the music industry was still busy trying to sell us albums, a model that no longer suited consumer behavior, Apple introduced the iPod by offering us 1,000 songs in our pocket. With the iPod and iTunes, Apple did a much better job of communicating the value of both the MP3 and the MP3 player relative to how we lived our lives. Their advertising didn't offer exhaustive description of product details. It wasn't about them. It was about us. And we understood why we wanted it. Apple did not invent the MP3, nor did they invent the technology that became the iPod. Yet, they are credited with transforming the music industry with it. The multi-gigabyte portable hard drive music player was actually invented by Creative Technology Ltd., a Singapore-based technology company that rose to prominence by making the Sound Blaster audio technology that enables home PCs to have sound. In fact, Apple didn't introduce the iPod until 22 months after Creative entry into the market. This detail alone calls into question the assumption of first movers' advantage. Given their history in digital sound, Creative was more qualified than Apple to introduce a digital music product. The problem was, they advertised their product as a 5 gigabyte MP3 player. It is exactly the same message as Apple's 1,000 song in your pocket. The difference is Creative told us what their product was, and Apple told us why we needed it. Wow. It's crazy. The slightest change in language. Language is so interesting. 5 gigabyte MP3 player versus 1,000 songs in your pocket. One is what the product is, and the other one is why you needed it. You no longer need to carry so many discs. Now you have 1,000 songs in your pocket. Only later, once we decided we had to have an iPod, did the what matter. And we chose the 5 gigabyte version, 10 gigabyte version, and so on. The tangible detail that proved we could get the 1,000 songs in our pocket. Our decision started with why, and so did Apple's offering. How many of us can say with certainty that indeed an iPod is actually better than Creative Zen? iPods, for example, are still plagued with battery life and battery replacement issues. They tend to just die. Maybe a Zen is better. The reality is, we don't even care if it is. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And it is Apple's clarity of why that gives them such a remarkable ability to innovate, often competing against companies seemingly more qualified than they, and succeed in industries outside their core business. The same cannot be said for companies with a fuzzy sense of why. When an organization defines itself by what it does, that's all it will ever be able to do. Apple's competitors, having defined themselves by their products or services, regardless of their differentiating value proposition, are not offered the same freedom. Gateway, for example, started selling flat screen TVs in 2003. Having made flat screen monitors for years, they were every bit as qualified to make and sell TVs. But the companies failed to make a credible name for itself among consumer electronics brands and gave up the business 2 years later to focus on its core business. Dell came out with the PDAs in 2002 and MP3 players in 2003, but lasted only a few years in each market. Dell makes good quality products and is fully qualified to produce these other technologies. The problem, what they had defined themselves by what they did. They made computers, and it simply didn't make sense to buy, and it simply didn't make sense to us to buy a PDA or MP3 player from them. It didn't feel right. How many people do you think would stand in line for 6 hours to buy a new cell phone from Dell, as they did for the release of Apple's iPhone? That's a good question. People couldn't see Dell as anything more than a computer company. It just didn't make sense. Poor sales quickly ended Dell's desire to enter the small electronics goods market. Instead, they opted to focus on their core business. Unless Dell, like so many others, can rediscover their founding purpose, cause or believe or belief, and start with why, and all they say and do. All they will ever do is sell computers. They will be stuck in their core business. Apple, unlike its competitors, has defined itself by why it does things, not what it does. It is not a computer company. But a company that challenges the status quo and offers individuals simpler alternatives. Apple even changed its legal name in 2007 from Apple Computer Inc. to Apple Inc. to reflect the fact that they were more than just a computer company. Practically speaking, it doesn't matter what a company's legal name is. For Apple, however, having the word computer in their name didn't limit what they could do. It limited how they thought of themselves. The change wasn't practical, it was philosophical. Apple's why was formed as its founding in the late 1970s, and it hasn't changed to this date. Regardless of the products they make or industries into which they migrate, their why still remains a constant. And Apple's intention to challenge accepted thinking has proved prophetic. As a computer company, they redirected the course of the personal computing industry. As a small electronics company, they have challenged the traditional dominance of companies like Sony and Philips. As a purveyor of mobile phones, they pushed the old hands, Motorola, Ericsson, and Nokia, to re-examine their own businesses. Apple's ability to enter and even dominate so many different industries has even challenged what it means to be a computer company in the first place. Regardless of what it does, we know why Apple exists. The same cannot be said for the competitors. Although they all had a clear sense of why at some point, it was one of the primary factors that helped each one of them become billion-dollar companies. Over the course of time, all of Apple's competitors lost their why. Now, all those companies define themselves by what they do. We make computers. They turned from companies with a cause into companies that sold products. And then what happens? Price, quality, service and features become the primary currency to motivate a purchase decision. At that point, a company and its products have ostensibly become commodities. As any company forced to compete on price, quality, service, or features alone can attest, it is very hard to differentiate for any period of time or build loyalty on those factors alone. Plus, it costs money and is stressful waking up every day trying to compete on that level alone. Knowing why is essential for lasting success and the ability to avoid being lumped in with others. Any company faced with the challenge of how to differentiate themselves in their market is basically a commodity, regardless of what they do or how they do it. As a milk producer, for example, and they will tell you, ask a milk producer, for example, and they will tell you that there are actually variations among milk brands. The problem is you have to be an expert to understand the difference. To the outside world, all milk is basically the same. So we just lump all the brands together and call it a commodity. In response, that's how the industry acts. This is largely the pattern for almost every other product or service on the market today, business to consumer or business to business. They focus on what they do and how they do it without consideration of why. We lump them together and they act like commodities. The more we treat them like commodities, the more they focus on what and how they do it. It's a vicious cycle. But only companies that act like commodities and the ones who wake up every day with the challenge of how to differentiate. Companies and organizations with a clear sense of why never worry about it. They don't think of themselves as being like anyone else, and they don't have to convince anyone of their value. They don't need to they don't need complex systems of carrots and sticks. They are different, and everyone knows it. They start with why in everything they say and do. There are those who still believe that Apple's difference comes from its marketing ability. Apple sells a lifestyle. Marketing professionals will tell you. Then, how come these marketing professionals haven't intentionally repeated Apple's success and longevity for another company? Calling it a lifestyle is a recognition that people who live in a certain way choose to incorporate Apple into their lives. Apple didn't invent the lifestyle, nor does it sell a lifestyle. Apple simply Apple is simply one of the brands that those who live a certain lifestyle are drawn to. Those people use certain products or brands in the course of living in that lifestyle. That is in part. Ooh, need some water, y'all. That is in part how we recognize their way of life in the first place. The products they choose become proof of why they do the things they do. It is only because Apple's why is so clear that those who believe what they believe are drawn to them. As Harley Davidson fits into their lifestyle of a certain group of people and Prada shoes fit into the lifestyle of another group, it is the lifestyle that came first. Like the products the company produces that serves as proof of the company's why. So too does a brand or product serve as proof of individuals' why. Not really. Others, even some who work for Apple, will say that what truly distinguishes Apple is in fact the quality of their products alone. Having good quality product is of course important. No matter how clear your why, if what you sell doesn't work, the whole thing falls apart. But a company doesn't need to have the best products. They just need to be good or very good. Better or best is a relative comparison. Without first understanding why, the comparison itself is of no value to the decision maker. The concept of better begs the question, based on what standard? Is a Ferrari F430 sports car better than a Honda Odyssey minivan? Oh, of course. It depends on why you need the car. If you have a family of 6, a 2-seater Ferrari is not better. However, if you're looking for a great way to meet women, a Honda minivan is probably not better, depending on what kind of woman you're looking to meet, I guess. I too shouldn't make assumptions. LOL. Okay, bro. Why the product exists must first be considered, and why someone wants it must match. I could tell you about all the engineering marvels of the Honda Odyssey, some of which may actually be better than the Ferrari. It certainly gets better gas mileage. The odds are that I'm going to convince someone who really wants that sports car to buy anything else. The odds are that I'm not going to convince someone who really wants that sports car to buy anything else. That some people are viscerally drawn to a Ferrari more than a Honda Odyssey says more about the person than the engineering of the product. The engineering, for example, would simply be one of the tangible points that a Ferrari lover could point out to prove how he feels about the car. The dogged defense of the superiority of the Ferrari from the person whose personality is predisposed to favor all the features and benefits of a Ferrari cannot be an objective conversation. Why do you think most people who buy Ferraris are willing to pay a premium to get it in the red, whereas most who buy Honda Odyssey probably don't care much about the color at all? For all those who will try to convince you that Apple computers are just better, I cannot dispute a single claim. All I can offer is that most of the factors that they believe make them better meet their standard of what a computer should do. With that in mind, Macintoshes are, in practice, only better for those who believe what Apple believes. Those people who share Apple's why believe that Apple's products are objectively better, and any attempt to convince them otherwise is pointless. Even with objective metrics in hand, the arguments about which is better or which is worse without first establishing a common standard creates nothing more than debate. Loyalists for each brand will point to various features and benefits that matter to them or don't matter to them, in an attempt to convince the other that they are right. And that's one of the primary reasons why so many companies feel the need to differentiate in the first place, based on the flawed assumption that only one group can be right. But what if both parties were right? What if an apple was right for some people and a PC was right for others? It's not a debate about better or worse anymore. It's a discussion about different needs. And before the discussion can even happen, the whys for each must be established first. A simple claim of better, even with the rational evidence to back it up, can create desire and even motivate a decision to buy, but it doesn't create loyalty. If a customer feels inspired to buy a product rather than manipulated, they will be able to verbalize the reasons why they think what they bought is better. Good quality and features matter, but they are not enough to produce the dogged loyalty that all the most inspiring leaders and companies are able to command. It is the cause that is represented by the company, brand, product, or person that inspires loyalty. Man, these pages are like stuck together. All right, last few pages. Not the only way, just one way. Knowing your why is not the only way to be successful, but it is the only way to maintain a lasting success and have a greater blend of innovation and flexibility. When a why goes fuzzy, it becomes much more difficult to maintain the growth, loyalty, and inspiration that help drive the original success. By difficult, I mean that manipulation rather than inspiration fast become the strategy of choice to motivate behavior. This is effective in the short term, but comes at a high cost in the long term. Consider the classic business school case of the railroads. In the late 1800s, the railroads were the biggest companies in the country. Having achieved such monumental success, even changing the landscape of America, remembering why stopped being important to them? Remembering why stopped being important to them. Instead, they became obsessed with what they did. They were the railroad business. This narrowing of perspective influenced their decision making. They invested all their money in tracks, in cross ties, and engines. But at the beginning of the 20th century, a new technology was introduced, the airplane. And all those big railroad companies eventually ran out of business. What if they had defined themselves as being in the mass transportation business? Perhaps their behavior could have been different. Perhaps they would have seen an opportunity that they otherwise missed. Perhaps they would have owned all the airlines today. The comparison raises the question of the long-term survivability of so many other companies that have defined themselves and their industries by what they do. That's a great point. They have been doing it the same way for so long that their ability to compete against a new technology or see a new perspective becomes a daunting task. The story of the railroad has eerie similarities to the case of music industry discussed earlier. This is another industry that has not done a good job of adjusting its business model to fit a behavioral change prompted by a new technology. Same thing can be said for banking. But other industries whose business models evolved in a different time show similar cracks. The newspaper, publishing, and television industries, to name but three. These are the current day railroads that are struggling to define their values while watching their customers turn to companies from other industries to serve their needs. Perhaps if music companies had a clear sense of why, they would have seen the opportunity to invent the equivalent of iTunes instead of leaving it to a scrappy computer company. In all cases, going back to the original purpose, cause or belief will help these industries adapt. Instead of asking, what should we do to compete? The question must be asked, why did we start doing what we're doing in the first place? And what can we do to bring our cause to life considering all the technologies and market opportunities available today? That is a loaded sentence. But don't take my word for it. None of this is my opinion. It is all firmly grounded in the tenets of biology. And time. Wow. We did that. Next time, we'll start at chapter 4. This is not opinion. This is biology. Let me see. Focus. I need you to focus. Yeah. So it's a very short chapter. It's like a chapter 4. We might have to do 4 and 5 together next time because it's like only a few pages. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's like 6 pages. But 5 is a lot longer. Yeah, we might have to do 4 and 5 together. It's not that big. All right. I'm call it. I'll be back on later to stream regularly. Thank you for joining the book club. I'll catch you next time. Peace.